I've seen that since university.
Funny, insightful interviews. Football watch, McKnight tonight. McKnight tonight. Here comes McKnight tonight.
Welcome to McKnight Tonight. Now, here's Rob McKnight.
Hello, good evening. I'm Rob McKnight and welcome to McKnight Tonight for Monday, the 8th of September. Now, did you know today is International Literacy Day? Well, I guess that's a reminder that knowledge is power, and tonight we're putting that power to good use. All right, before we dive in, a quick ask. If you enjoy what we do here, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on YouTube and join the conversation in the comments. Just go to youtube.com/@McKnight Tonight. I will get to your feedback later in the show. I cannot wait to see what you think of tonight's topics. And over the weekend, I did a new thing. I hadn't planned it, but I went and did a live stream. I think it was on Saturday. Amanda was out of the house and I just went, I'm going into the garage, the home garage, and doing a live stream to the paid subscribers of the YouTube page. And I did that because I showed them a bit of the studio, or the garage as you know it to be. And I also just responded to some comments that had come in during the week. So that's the thing I'm going to do weekly for those paid subscribers. And as I said, I'll get to your feedback later in the show, so keep the feedback coming. And if you'd like to help keep the show going, you can shout us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/@McKnight Tonight. Every bit goes straight back into making this show possible. It's a big show tonight. Let me tell you about it. Coming up tonight, former Qantas pilot Graeme Hood. He'll be here for an exclusive interview just days before he leads the upcoming Australia Unites rally in Sydney, where he will also deliver the keynote address. Australia's war on smoking has spiralled out of control, with tobacco taxes fueling a $5 billion black market inferno. We'll take you inside the extraordinary scenes as Erin Patterson's sentence is broadcast live from the Supreme Court in Victoria. But did the cameras really show us the full picture? And in Rob's rant tonight, the government is finally moving on airline protections. Could this mean fairer refunds, real compensation, and even an ombudsman in your corner? All that and plenty more ahead in this edition of McKnight Tonight. Now, let's get into our hot topics. Australia's war on smoking has taken a dangerous turn. Sky-high tobacco taxes were meant to protect public health. Instead, they've lit the fuse on a $5 billion black market inferno. According to The Australian, since 2019, the excise has soared 75%, pushing the price of a legal pack up to $50. Illicit packs? Less than half of that. The result, more than 150 firebombings, turf wars, and even the tragic death of 27-year-old Katie Tangi in a mistaken arson attack. But none of this is new information for regular viewers of McKnight Tonight. Back in May, I spoke about this very issue and why we were seeing an increase in illegal tobacco and the tobacco wars. Cigarettes are just too expensive. We've gotten to the point where successive governments keep putting taxes up on cigarettes. Now, of course, they're saying, and I believe it's true, the health issues, they want people to stop. The problem is we do live in a free society and a democratic society, and people have the right to smoke if they want. It's not illegal. But I'll give you an example. In Sydney, a packet of cigarettes, that's 20 cigarettes, typically costs around $40. So that is $2 a cigarette. And as you well know, and I've got a list of prices here, cigarettes, if you're buying a couple of packets or a carton, costs a lot more than that. So when people are facing a cost of living crisis and they don't want to give up their cigarettes, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to start buying it illegally. It's a legal product, but they're buying illegal versions of it or from illegal stores because they want it cheaper. Geez, it was only in May, but it looks 5 years ago. But he has a point, that smart, handsome man, that younger version of me. He has a point. The government has made it too expensive. And that's why regular, everyday people I know, people I like, my friends, are going and buying illegal tobacco. And that's leading to gangs seeing, what do gangs do? Any place there's a point to make money, they will go and take over that market. So we've got these illegal wars. We've got these turf wars where they're all trying to edge each other out. Forget heroin. The big money is in tobacco because you're hitting regular people who wouldn't necessarily take drugs but are taking the tobacco because they don't want to pay $50 for a carton of cigarettes. And why would they? It's bloody ridiculous. So all the do-gooders in Canberra can keep saying, well, we'll just tax people out of it. I don't know if there's any proof that taxing something more has ever worked to reduce it. People just pay the tax. It's like the idea of a tax on junk food. Will people stop going to McDonald's and KFC? Oh, God, I could do with some KFC. No, they won't. They'll just pay for it and other things will go by the wayside. Do all the education campaigns. We know how harmful tobacco is now. So do the campaigns, educate people, but stop taxing the people that make the decision to do it. If it's that bad, outlaw it. Make it illegal and deal with the political consequences of that because you will have to. Smokers are just ripe for the pickings, and that's what governments do. Oh, we're trying to look after people, so we're going to take all this tax, all this money. Well, you've created this gang problem, this turf war, these illegal tobacconist fights. But will the government do anything to fix it? Not on your life. Police, they'll talk about police and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, they are responsible for this. They need to fix it. Stop the stupid tariffs, the prices, not tariffs. I'm thinking Donald Trump. Stop the excise on these cigarettes. Bring it right back down. This is ridiculous.
Here comes McKnight tonight.
Okay, let me know what you think by leaving your thoughts in the comment section of this video. Your feedback is coming up shortly, as is that exclusive interview with Graeme Hood, who will be leading the Australia Unites rally in Sydney. He'll also be the keynote speaker. They're saying this is not based in racism. We will go through what they are protesting for, what this rally is for when I speak with him shortly. All right, moving on. It was a first for Victoria this morning when the sentence of mushroom killer Erin Patterson was broadcast live from Victoria's Supreme Court. Have a look.
For the attempted murder of Ian Wilkinson, I sentence you to 25 years imprisonment. For the murder of Heather Wilkinson, I sentence you to life imprisonment. For the murder of Gail Patterson, I sentence you to life imprisonment. For the murder of Don Patterson, I sentence you to life imprisonment. All sentences are to be served concurrently. The total effective sentence is life imprisonment, and I fix a non-parole period of 33 years.
Great, but it doesn't go far enough. It's a good start, but we need cameras in our courts. America does it, and you might say, well, it becomes a spectacle. We see clips on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram. Yeah, okay. What's wrong with that? We see justice happening. There's nothing wrong with people being interested in justice. And if courts are doing something wrong, courts being held to account. That's democracy. This idea that the Supreme Courts and the federal court shouldn't be broadcast, give me a break. The Federal Court of Australia will do live streams, but you're not allowed to rebroadcast them. You're not allowed to post clips on social media. And I don't understand the idea from that. If we're talking about open, transparent proceedings, then in my mind, it should be everywhere. And one of the biggest problems with what we saw here was that we saw Justice Christopher Beale. He was the Supreme Court judge delivering that, and the camera was only on him. It was only when I saw reporting later or just immediately after that I heard about Erin Peterson actually sitting back like this, ignoring him as he was speaking to her. Now, I wouldn't have assumed that from watching that. But seeing her reaction, seeing the wheels of justice turn, isn't that as important? Why do we have to rely on this secondhand reporting on what happened when I could see it for myself? If there were multiple cameras in that courtroom, why can't I see her reaction? What are we losing? What are we giving up by allowing that? Some traditionalists might say you're turning it into a spectacle. No, I call it open justice. Camera should have been in there for the trial. This was a trial that reverberated around the country and around the world. Why shouldn't we see why things are happening? How many times have you heard the result of something and gone, well, why have they done that? Imagine if you could go and watch it and see the arguments that were put forward, the judge's reasoning. You would understand why this happened, why this decision was made. You might still disagree with it, but you'd have an understanding rather than being told she was found not guilty. Not that she was, I'm giving an example. But imagine if she was found not guilty. And people went, how? The evidence just seems so overwhelming. We would know by watching the proceedings. And while I talk about Erin Peterson, I can't get her name in my head. The funniest thing, I've said this before, I knew she was guilty from the get-go and she might appeal. But that press conference she did where she said, I'm terribly sorry for everyone. Not one tear in the eye, even though she's wiping it. And she's even looking. Have I managed to cry? And I've covered this on my Monsters Who Murder podcast. But these serial killers, one, they have no empathy for the people they've killed. And they also, it's hard to do two things at once. You're trying to perform for the cameras, you're trying to tell a story, and you're trying to do tears. And unless you're an actor, it's very, very difficult. But that is always the telltale sign. At any press conference, if they're crying about what's happened and how bad they feel for these people, and there's not one tear, they're guilty.
Here comes McKnight tonight.
Yes, it's time for Rob's rant. And if you've ever felt you're at the mercy of airlines when you fly, well, things could be about to change. The shoe's going on the other foot. You see, the government has announced the idea of a new aviation consumer protection scheme. There'll be a 4-week public consultation period with legislation promised by the end of 2025. Now, the aim here is one national standard across every airport and airline with clear rules for refunds, compensations, booking information, baggage mishaps, and even an ombudsman in your corner. Hallelujah, or hallelujah, in fact. When I was working at 7 weekly and going down to Sydney each week, I got done over by Qantas so many times with those ghost flights where your flight had been cancelled and you know, it was absolutely outrageous. But the airline should have to pay something. If a flight is delayed 24 hours, I can accept a 1-hour delay of a flight or something like that. That's just part of flying, right? Stuff happens. But if your plane is cancelled and you have to move to a flight that afternoon, I think there should be some compensation and not a credit voucher. We're talking about real compensation. If your bags go missing, well, you deserve to have your luggage paid for. If you've turned up in a location with no luggage, you're in trouble. Now, I know people will say travel insurance, but when do the airlines take responsibility for this stuff? I think the airlines treat us like mugs, and it's just getting worse and worse. You know, I keep seeing these things on TikTok about stand-up seats. That's not a real thing. But you sort of imagine it's going to happen soon, don't you? I think it will. But I love this idea. The airlines have to be held to account. You know, Qantas is making so much in profits. They all are. And there have been times where the airlines have done it tough. We saw Ansett go years and years and years ago. Rex is in trouble in Australia. But good quality service shouldn't just be something you hope you get. It should be something you have to give. And if the airlines aren't giving it, they have to pay the price for it. It's as simple as that. All right. That's Rob's rant. I know, not as ranty as usual. I thought I'd be more fired up by that story, but, you know, I see hope. I see something being done, which leads me to not rant as much, maybe. I don't know. Hey, coming up, that exclusive interview with Graeme Hood. He's just around the corner after I get to your feedback. But first, let's travel to another place around the world for our random live shot of the day.
It's the random life shot of the day. Where are you going today? You'll never know where you'll end up with the random live shot of the day.
Yes, it's time for our random live shot of the day. And tonight we're heading deep into one of the oldest deserts on Earth. This is the Namib Desert in Namibia. What you're looking at is a live feed from a remote watering hole inside the Gondwana Namib Park, which connects directly to the vast National Park. Together they cover more than 56,000. I've got to pre-read these scripts. Together they cover more than 56,000 square kilometres of unfettered wilderness, giving animals the freedom to roar as nature intended. Now, at this spot, you'll often see desert-adapted wildlife like ostriches. Ostriches. Can we do a take two on this? We're not live or anything, are we? Sorry, I'm going to go back in the order queue. At this spot, you'll often see desert-adapted wildlife like ostriches and oryx. Oh my God, making their way in for a drink. Sometimes it's calm, sometimes you'll catch a bit of desert drama as species compete for their place at the waterhole. What are you laughing at? Dessert. Did I say dessert? Do you know, I've actually always had a problem with those two words and writing them down, desert and dessert. You know what? We've got a lot of new viewers tonight and the show is going so well, so well. For those that have joined us for the first time, I have Amanda and Jasmine over there. Amanda's my wife. She switches the show. Jasmine does the social media feedback, so be nice. And yeah, this is our random live shot of the day. All right, let's move on. I know people are waiting to see Graeme and do that interview. So let's take a look at some of the feedback coming through. Welcome to the downside of high taxes on cigarettes. Now it's more dangerous to own a store that sells them than it is to smoke them. Own your crazy, absolutely right. Over the page we go, and we've got Mac saying, I'm a first time watching too. Go Hoodie. Thank you for joining us tonight. Really appreciate you being here, Dot. Pam says, wow, $40 now. Glad I don't smoke anymore. Which is great. Which is great, Pam. But for those that do, and I'm not one of them, never been a smoker, but had the occasional drunk smoke, as you do. But I feel sorry for everyday Aussies just trying to have a ciggy, because you know that the high end of society, they're all on the coke and everything like that, which isn't being taxed. So anyway, Valerie says, once we lived in a democracy, not so much these days. No, it's a taxocracy, I want to say. When you're taxed instead of a democracy, it's a taxocracy. I'll come up with that word, taxocracy, maybe. All right, Restoration Archive says, they know there is a problem, so what do? They let the price increase happen. They have no option to just make tobacco illegal. Well, that's the point. And they can take that to... they can basically take that to the public. New Zealand have actually just done it. If you're below the age of 18 now, you are not allowed to smoke. But that is a policy, I'm pretty sure that's right. So the Australian government can do it. Otherwise, just do campaigns, education. There's been so much education about what tobacco does to us that people have stopped taking it for health reasons, but there are still those who like it. I just think they're being treated unfairly. We've got this one. Ironic, government sent tobacco over to the troops while at war. Some never smoked but took it up while at war, and now they want people to give it up. Good point. Thank you very much for your comment. For a first-timer tonight on McKnight Tonight. We've got this one. First-time viewer here too, and I'm enjoying the show so far. Well, hopefully, Trish, I'm not letting you down with my random live shot of the day, and I will pre-read the script tomorrow, I promise you. Beck says, I'm not saying that you shouldn't be punished, and this is on the Erin Peterson trial, but I am saying that I hope she can get the help she needs, because it's just something that I found off the whole case about it. I might get some hate. You're not going to get hate, Beck. To me, she obviously has a mental problem, a mental health problem, but I would think that about anyone who killed anybody. Over the page we go. Oh, I want to look. I will just mention this one. Where was it? David Hurley, who said this is the worst thing he's ever seen on YouTube. Thanks, David. You can't please them all. But thankfully, we've had people step in and say that they're actually enjoying the show. So thank you. We're here every Monday, Wednesday and Thursday at 9 p.m. right here on the McKnight Tonight channel. And on Tuesdays, we focus on media with a show called Media McKnight that streams out at 9 as well. So basically, Monday to Thursday, set it up on your YouTube, set the notifications. We are here talking hot topics, and you never know who you'll meet next. Thank you for your company. Keep your feedback coming. I'll get to more shortly. Now let's get into our feature interview.
Here comes McKnight Tonight.
Okay, this week, some of the biggest names in TV, both on screen and behind the scenes, went to Canberra with the begging bowl out. Their aim was to showcase the value of free-to-air television and lobby decision makers on a range of topics to find out what they want and whether they're... Hello again. We had a slight problem, but we've rectified it and now we can go. And look, I'm going to be honest with you. This interview is pre-recorded and the wrong clip played. But now we're going to play the correct clip. All right, here we go. Well, these scenes during the March for Australia rally on August 31 upset a lot of Aussies who don't consider themselves racist, but they do want to stand up for their country and take a stand against the government. Now another rally is set to take place on Saturday, September 13, and organisers have a very clear message. Neo-Nazis are not welcome. No racism or any acts of hate or violence will be tolerated in any capacity. This is a peaceful event. We stand in love, peace and unity as one against government corruption. Graeme Hood will be leading the Sydney rally and will also be the keynote speaker. Graeme, welcome to McKnight Tonight.
Great to be on, Rob. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Many in the mainstream media have criticised those who attended the March for Australia rally as being racist. They claim they knowingly went to these events knowing that it was being organised by neo-Nazis. Do you think that's fair?
No, I don't think it's fair at all, Rob. And that's part of the problem we have in the country at the moment is mainstream media's interpretation of what people are actually out there for. I remember the big rally that took place in Canberra, which many in the media said was the biggest rally in Australian history in 2022. That was misconstrued by a whole bunch of different journalists based on the fringe elements around that rally. But the majority of people there are everyday mums and dads, Australians who have been affected in some way by government overreach in the last 5 years. And their story, their poetry had not been written as a result of the media's attack of trying to not trying to pick out individual groups there to target them to make the whole thing look radical.
And it's interesting because when I saw footage of the March for Australia protests or rallies, whatever you want to call it, I saw Aussies trying to pull the neo-Nazi speakers away and said, this isn't what we're here. So I find racism claims interesting because it seems to be that when people stand up for Australia, they're labelled racist, aren't they? Look at this opinion piece from The Conversation, basically paints Australia as a racist country. I'll read this bit out for you from this article. Portraying these rallies as something new and unusual prevents us from understanding how the situation arose in the first place. This includes the unpalatable truth of ongoing racism and ethnic nationalism in Australia. Do you think we're a racist country?
We are not a racist country. I mean, no way in the world. You know, I saw an interview once, I think it was recorded in the 80s, with an American actor. His name just escapes me at the moment. He's a very famous African-American actor, and he was being interviewed by a prominent journalist from 60 Minutes and said, what are we going to do about racism in America? And this guy, Morgan Freeman it was, he said, stop talking about it. You know, we are not a racist country. I am not a racist person at all. And most of the people who are attending these rallies, a lot of them are walking arm in arm with people with different coloured skin and from different ethnic and religious backgrounds. That whole notion, I believe, is put in place to divide and keep this nation divided so it can be better controlled by forces of who knows what.
Well, it's interesting you use the word control because it does seem to me that if you support Australia and Australian values, that's automatic racism because the people on the far left are against Australian values. What are you trying to achieve with this rally, though? Do you really think the government is corrupt and it needs to be people to stand up to it?
Look, for one, I think the corrupt title or label on the rally is probably a little bit misconstrued. I think there's corrupt policy. I think there's corrupt thinking. There's corrupt attitudes within the government that need to change. This government has demonstrated, as previous governments have in the last several years, that they are not reading the mood of the people. And the
But
people
is that corruption? I mean,
rise up.
I'm just trying to get across. I appreciate what you've said about the poster.
Yeah.
But when we say there is levels of corruption in the government, what do you mean by that?
All right. Well, let's say, for example, if we go to the COVID issue that we've been through, the mandates and everything that was applied from that, there is levels of corruption when you consider that the Therapeutic Goods Administration, Rob, is 95% funded by the big pharmaceutical companies. Now, that doesn't pass the pub test. And yet the fact that we bring that up, and other people of note bring that up, including eminent scientists who have been cancelled as a result of their outspoken narrative, when that's brought up and that's totally ignored and no explanation is given, we're left to assume that there's something going on that's not healthy. So that's just one example.
Well, I know you have some issues with COVID, and I'll get to that. I want to go through the points of what the rally is trying to achieve, because there are numerous ones of them. But on the COVID side, I feel like the narrative has changed. You know, everyone was fearful about speaking out against COVID and about the mandates and about the vaccine. That narrative does seem to have changed within the Australian discourse now.
It does appear to change, and I think that's reflected in the vaccine rates at the moment. The latest figures I saw, that it was only 5% of the Australian population is currently vaccinated against COVID-19. So obviously a lot of people are smelling a rat in the cheese factory. So that is rising to the surface, and that's driving a lot of anxiety and a lot of scepticism amongst the Australian people, and the government need to recognise that.
I think one of the things that people think is, when they think vaccine, they think like smallpox, where it's eliminated completely, but we didn't get that with COVID.
No, well, we didn't. And they pushed the narrative, safe and effective, safe and effective. And there's been enough evidence out there now, if it's properly viewed and, dare I say, published by the mainstream media, should bring about a full and thorough investigation. The evidence is out there now that there's an elephant in the room that people are not looking at. Doctors are talking about increases in cancer rates and things like that. They don't know what's causing it, they're saying, but they know it's not the vaccine. Well, they haven't ruled that out, and they can't rule that out until they have a proper, thorough investigation that's independently managed. And I gave evidence in the Senate hearings, the Estimates Committee hearings, in Canberra, when they were discussing the terms of reference. And it was vitally important that people's questions get answered, because when governments don't answer questions, it breeds conspiracy theories. And that's the issue that we find ourselves in now.
Well, and to defend the mainstream media, of which I have worked many years in, I will say I produced the COVID Spotlight special for the 7 News Spotlight, and we did talk about Karen Phelps's partner had a really bad reaction to the vaccine, and we did discuss that on the program. So I just want to say that there are little bits where these issues are being discussed. On the rally front, though, you've lost the fight to go onto the Harbour Bridge because organisers decided not to fight it in court. Was that a bad decision?
No, I don't think it was. I think it was a very good decision. For a start, when you sort of say I'm a leader or whatever, I'll be sort of marching in the lead with a lot of the other speakers. So I've been invited to speak. I don't have anything to do with the organisation of the rally per se. But I do think that there was a swifty pulled by New South Wales Police. They seemed to indicate in meetings leading up to the planning stages that they were fine with the Sydney Harbour Bridge being used. And then at 3 o'clock on the last Friday afternoon, they said they weren't going to allow it. They were going to take it to court, and they gave the organiser 3 days over the weekend, which included Father's Day, to come up with a legal team to go to court about it and to put together a brief. And there was no way. Plus, she had the threat of New South Wales police court costs hanging over her head. And so there was no time to do that, and it was pretty scurrilously done, I might add. I think the Premier's got his fingerprints all over that, because he said he would do whatever it takes to make sure this doesn't happen. And the organiser decided to keep the rally going because they were threatening the entire event that she would concede the bridge and in that way keep Hyde Park and the march through the city. And all this does now is just further fire up the people who are coming and gives them more reason to be there. Because if you can have a gay pride march, if you can have a pro-Palestinian march, if you can have a renewable energies march, if you can run a marathon over the Sydney Harbour Bridge, but you can't as an Australian protest and carry your own flag over the bridge, that says a lot about where we're at and why this rally's happening in the first place.
Well, in fairness, the pro-Palestinian march, they did have to go to court and fight for their right to cross the Harbour Bridge. The police did fight them as well. They
did. But they had time and they had a big legal team to organise that. And we thought that the precedent was set with those events taking place. And it was and the way that the police talked about it, and a lot of the police at the meeting, I'm told, were saying, yeah, look, we can do this. This is not a problem. But it seems to me that something's happened above and beyond that at the 11th hour, which has caused this to happen. And once again, this is indicative of governments who don't realise they don't read the room. They can't see the damage that they're doing by trying to push this stuff aside and ignore people who've got legitimate concerns. And that's why that's going to increase the number of people at the Sydney rally.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how many people turn up. It's very interesting you say that they sent the legal notice on 3 o'clock on a Friday, because anyone who's ever had anything to do with any court case knows that's when you send it, because you try to get people off guard who have finished for the week and aren't expecting it. So that is very, very interesting.
Very clever ploy. Very clever ploy.
Yeah, very much. Now, look, you mentioned COVID. You've talked about it. You're an ex-Qantas pilot. You became known because of your stance during the COVID pandemic. I want to show people here the video that basically made you famous in a way. It was the video that went viral when you made this video during the COVID pandemic. Let's have a look.
Can't go to cities 'cause they're all locked down. I can't hug me grandkids, they're in the next town. And even with my mask on, you can still see me frown. I still call Australia home. Everything I stand for is now being threatened by a ridiculous mandate that I cannot support. It's a mandate that all aviation workers in the industry are now being forced to adopt, and that is no jab, no job. And a timeline's been set on for goodness sake, has been set on no jab, no job. If I never fly again, it will be a bit of disappointment. But I will not sit in front of a television saying, why don't they do something, knowing that the they is me. Time to wake up, Australia. We're on final approach to land. It's been a pleasure serving you. I've done it safely and with pride and with dignity and with authenticity, and that's how I will live my life to the rest of my days. I pray this is not the last time I wear the uniform, but I've got a feeling now I've probably blown it. But so be it.
Well, there's no doubt the emotion in that is real, Graeme.
Very real, Rob, yes.
How do you feel looking back at that?
Emotional, because I was doing at that stage in my career, with 2 more years I wanted to run, I was doing what I wanted to do since I was a 5-year-old boy.
Yeah.
And to give up working for what I thought before then was the best and safest airline in the world under such circumstances was incredibly hard thing to do. I knew that when I made that video and it went out that it would be the end of everything, but it really was only the beginning, because I realised that a man has to stand in the shadow of his own conscience, and I could not, in all good conscience, work for a company that was forcing an experimental serum into the arms of pilots. They wouldn't let me fly an aeroplane with an experimental fuel in it, and yet they were expecting us to fly without it being tested. And I did everything I could to find out all the information I would need to be able to give proper, thorough and well-educated informed consent, voluntary informed consent. And nobody could give me the information that I could base that informed consent on. So I have no regrets that I did that. It wasn't the way I thought I would go. I had a brilliant career. I love my job. I love the people I work with. I'm so grateful that I had it. But life has taken a different turn now, and I don't regret what I've done 1 minute.
Well, that's interesting to know. And look, I do know people who took the same stand and got shunned in the television industry and other industries as well. And COVID is one of the key points on the Australia Unites website about the rally. This is one of the points. WHO pandemic treaty. We reject the handling over a national decision-making power to unelected global bodies. The World Health Organization pandemic treaty risks overriding local sovereignty and placing our health policies under external control. Did we actually do that, though? We still make our own decisions. Each state made their own decisions, didn't they?
Each state made its own decisions, but this pandemic treaty is still being brought to the fore. It's still currently being worked on, and when it's enacted, and it will be enacted, it is going to give a foreign entity the right to dictate how we manage a pandemic here in the future. And
so hang on, are you saying who can make the rules of how we react? They can't just give advice.
No, it's all about this treaty is about them setting the goalposts and instructing the organisations, the countries that are member states, to do exactly what they say. That's the way we understand it, and nobody's come out to say anything different that makes any sense.
Okay. Now, look, I've got to say, Graeme, I understand your belief that people shouldn't be forced to inject a vaccine into their body. I actually agree with that. Okay. So, you know, I did take the vaccine. It was part of where I was working at 4BC under Nine Entertainment at the time. But, you know, there were people that I know that had immune problems that then, you know, couldn't register on the Queensland app, weren't allowed to go anywhere because they couldn't take the vaccine for whatever reason. But I will say, as someone living in Queensland, I've got to say I was happy with the hard border. We were allowed to go outside while other states were homebound. And it seemed like everyone wanted us to open the border so that we could get COVID. Do you think there was an issue? And I feel like you do think that there was a problem with hard borders, even though Anastasia Palaszczuk won an election off it. And despite the backlash against Dan Andrews, he won another election.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of conjecture about Dan Andrews winning that election too.
Sure.
I mean, I'm not saying it was a fake election or anything like that. I'm not going down that road. But we have a situation in this country where, well, let's go back first to the hard borders. From somebody who was living inside Queensland as you were, everything would have seemed hunky-dory. But I live south of the Queensland border in northern New South Wales, and I had to go through checkpoints in uniform to go to work every day. And when I'd go to work, we would take off, for example, and fly an aircraft full of passengers over from Brisbane to Perth, only to be told on descent, which happened several times, that McGowan had decided to close the borders, and all those people on the aeroplane either had to stay on it and go back, or they were going to have to go into 2 weeks quarantine. The border closures were an absolute nightmare. Also, there were so many people who were stuck on the New South Wales side of the Queensland border who couldn't go to visit dying relatives. There was one gentleman who had an 8-year-old son dying of leukemia, and even the chief medical officer at the time refused him access to come and see his dying child. Now
which was ridiculous. And crazy. We all agree with that. Absolutely ridiculous. And if you look at the Queensland border, there were literally just bollards. People could climb over them. Yeah, you couldn't get your car across, but you could climb over and go either side at Tweed Heads. Yeah,
exactly right. But here's the thing too, Rob, that the Australian Constitution of 1901 prohibits the closure of borders. It prohibits it. And it also prohibits medical conscription. And both those elements of the Australian Constitution of 1901 were completely ignored. So the Australian people lost protections that were entitled to under the highest law of the land. So there's so much. On the whole,
there was a willingness, though. If we're going to be honest, you know, the government got in trouble at the time for not bringing vaccines in fast enough. You remember ScoMo said, we'll be the first with vaccines, and then we weren't, and he was copying all the pressure over that. I think the biggest issue is it wasn't a choice. That's the issue, isn't it?
Yeah, well, back then I was in that boat. I was in that boat as well. I was, Rob. I was 2 days from getting the Pfizer vaccine. I contacted the company and said, "Look, I'm not going to get AstraZeneca because I'm over 60 and I don't want to get blood clots, especially working at high altitude where you get those things." And I said, "Look, I'll get it." And it wasn't until my wife heard me make the phone call to my boss saying I'd get it. And she said, have you done your research? And I said, well, no, I'm just trusting the government. She said, well, you're a risk-benefit analysis person. Why don't you do your research? Which I did. And I went to the ABC. I went to ABC iView and I looked at 2 programs, Four Corners programs. They did 2 of them on Vaccinating Australia. And what got me going, what tilted me the exact opposite way was, I think it might have been Craig Kelly asked under Freedom of Information for the vaccine rollout policy to be made public. And 39 pages, Rob, were completely redacted. And even the reporter on the ABC said there's something wrong here. So he went to see Brendan Murphy and he held up the document and he said, why is this whole document completely redacted? And Brendan Murphy said, well, we've got delicate arrangements with our suppliers and they don't want us to say too much about that. Now, I believe we had a right. That is an issue. Now, the other thing too is that I have a wife who has severe asthma. I was really concerned I was going to bring something home to her. But as the narrative went further and further along, and we were starting to see that things were looking crazy, like, for example, you have to get vaccinated to visit your parents in a nursing home. Now, if this was safe and effective, and they've been vaccinated, and I gave permission for my stepmother to be vaccinated in the nursing home.
So you're not an anti-vaxxer is what you're saying?
No, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I've had every vaccine under the sun until this one. Yeah. But I'll tell you what, I'm an anti-vaxxer now because I've learned enough in the last 4 years to know that I can't trust the system anymore. So I've interviewed several hundred top scientists and doctors, some of the best in the world, who are saying we've got to stop vaccinating these people with this mRNA shot. It's a death trap. And they're being totally ignored and cancelled. So for me, it was once I realised what was going on, then I realised the fear narrative that was being employed, A, by the government, and B, I'm sorry to say, by the mainstream media, that was driving this narrative. We've got to, and it took away the rationale of most people who think fairly practically, normally. You know, if you think, well, if my stepmother's been vaccinated in the nursing home, what difference does it make if I'm not vaccinated because she's protected, or isn't she?
Yeah,
so
well,
none of that made sense.
It wasn't the traditional understanding I have for a vaccine. I always assumed that when the vaccine came, that's it, you won't get COVID anymore. Obviously, we now know it wasn't like that. And I think what happened was people thought it was almost like they were alive during the Blitz. You know, this was their version of it. We've got to rally behind, keep calm and carry on. And I think people got swept up in just doing whatever the government said at the time because we thought we were doing the right thing.
I was hugged by a guy at the first rally I ever spoke at the Tweed border, and he was crying and he said, I just don't feel like I have the right to even approach you. I'm a coward. I said, why are you a coward? He said, I've been fighting off getting this vaccine for so long. I've got 3 teenage boys and my daughter, and my teenage boys are living in flats. They're doing apprenticeships. And I said to them, if you guys promise me you won't get vaccinated, you can all come back, live with Mum and I'll get vaccinated and I'll use my income to keep us all going. And I remember the
That's
abject...
not cowardly.
That's not cowardly. I said to him, would you take a bullet for your family? He said, I would. I said, well, you just did. So you're a hero. You're not a coward. And there was all this rhetoric going on that wasn't helpful. People were divided on various issues around the vaccine, so I can understand that. But the fear narrative kept going and it became more and more ridiculous. I saw a recent old video clip of a news conference with Brett Sutton in Victoria, the chief medical officer down there, when he was asked, are the MPs, the politicians, going to be forced to take it? And he said, no, for legal reasons, apparently we can't make them do it. Well, if you can't make the politicians do it, the members of parliament, how can you make the firemen in Victoria take it? And if they don't, they lose their jobs. How can you make all the other people who lost their jobs take it? And most people took it.
That's the thing that gets me. If it's your well-being that's going to be an issue here, then, and you're not infecting someone else, you know, I don't understand why people couldn't keep working if they didn't take it when they were the ones that would suffer the consequences if they got COVID.
If it was safe and effective, you could say that logically and that would be true. But even Scott Morrison said the Wednesday before he was voted out at a roadside sort of press conference, he was asked about the numbers of the people who died from COVID, And he said, we're really lucky in this country because there haven't been that many. And the reporter said, what are you talking about? He said, well, no, we've classified a lot of people who died with COVID as having died of COVID. So there were people dying in road accidents. If they tested positive for COVID, those numbers were added. And during that whole period, Rob, we never had any of the influenza deaths that we were having all the time, every year. And since then, we've seen up to an 18% increase in excess mortality that nobody seems to be able to explain.
Well, I would have thought it's because we were actually keeping 1.5 metres away from everyone and we actually washed our hands.
Yeah, who would know? Who would know?
True.
I mean, the whole thing was just crazy. But all I'm saying is, and I say to people say to me, it's all over. And I say, well, look, it isn't. It's going to go on for a while. There's still a lot of people unemployed because of it. There's still mandates in place. And the thing is, my question to you would be, Rob, if you thought that someone was fiddling with your DNA or your immune system, would you like to know about it?
Of course. It's a simple
Of course
answer.
you would. And that's what the people are saying. We feel there's something wrong. We feel that we've been misled because by and large we have been. So please, let's work out what's going on. Now, the main issue we've got to work out what's going on. A lot of people want vengeance. They want justice to be seen to be done. I'm about remedy. We need remedy. There are lots of people who are incredibly ill. A lot of people have died. Now, a lot of people are saying that that's from the COVID vaccine and some are saying it's from long COVID and all this sort of stuff. But nobody can give a definitive answer. You have to, if we're going to start saving people's lives and get the health system back on track in this country, we have to examine all the aspects of what's gone on and find out what's really causing this, and not just isolating one and pushing it aside so you can't go there. You can't talk about the vaccines. That's rubbish. That's not proper science. Science is meant to
everything
check
should be
itself.
on the table. Look, we've gone a very long time. So there are many issues that are being rallied for at this Australia Unites. Let's just go through some of the other issues. Immigration reform is another key point. This is what the website says. Immigration must be transparent, sustainable and balanced with the needs of Australian workers, housing availability and community wellbeing. We support reform that puts fairness, accountability and long-term planning first. Is immigration really the issue it's being made out to be at the moment?
Look, immigration, the only reason immigration is a big issue at the moment is because of the hangover still from the last 4 years. We've got people who I know, I've been to the areas where they sleep. There are people, a lot of women in particular, who are sleeping in their cars. They cannot get accommodation. They cannot get food. I've got friends who go around delivering food and goods to people who are living in these terrible conditions. They've got nothing. My wife and I toured Australia for 15 months. We did 70,000 kilometres and we spoke to 300 communities. And people are really struggling. They can't get jobs, or they've lost their jobs and they can't find any suitable employment because of the mandates. They've got nowhere to live. And so sustainable immigration cannot be something that this government can promise while we've got the mess that we have at the moment. And that's got nothing to do with race. And I want to tell you, Rob, that there are many Labor governments who felt that sustainable immigration was a must. It had to be. It was Ben Chifley in 45 to 49, Gough Whitlam in 72 to 75. You had Bob Hawke and Paul Keating, 83 to 96, Kevin Rudd. You had Julia Gillard. Even Anthony Albanese said immigration that is not sustainable is not going to be for the benefit of the country. And all we're saying is immigration's fine, but are we looking after the people who are in desperate need now? And what are we going to do with the people we bring in if we can't even house and feed and employ the people that we've got here already? So sustainable immigration is something that we need to embrace and not just charge ahead because someone like the United Nations says everybody's got to take more people.
Oh, sure. I guess the question is, what is sustainable immigration? Today on the ABC News 24, Professor Peter McDonald from ANU, he reckons the numbers don't support community fears. Have a look at what he said.
The mass migration argument is very misplaced. Between 2023 and 2024, net overseas migration fell by 190,000 in 1 year, in 1 year, and it's well and truly on the way down. We had mass migration, it's true, for a couple of years following COVID because the borders had been closed and large numbers of people came in when the borders were open. But it's not an issue anymore. That's the wrong issue. The issue at the moment is the structure of the program.
What do you reckon, Graeme?
Pretty hard to disagree with that. That's what I'm talking about. It's the structure of the program. The fact that people are upset about mass immigration is because they're in a state of anxiety. They don't know where the next dollar's coming from. They can't pay the power bill. They can't put a roof over their families' heads. These people are really struggling, and they're the people who are upset about mass migration. And plus, you've got all these different numbers being bandied around by different groups and different people, even coming out of the parliament. You know, some politicians have been criticised for using the wrong numbers. But this is it. There seems to be no transparency in anything that's happening out of Canberra, or the states for that matter. And I say again, conspiracy theories thrive when governments keep secrets, because people are left to make up their own theory of what's going on.
I love that quote. That's a great quote. You've just mentioned cost of living and the housing crisis. The next item on the website is Australians are struggling with skyrocketing rents, unaffordable mortgages, and the rising cost of essentials. We demand urgent action to address housing shortages, rein in corporate profiteering, and restore affordability for families. Now, immigration is being blamed and has been blamed for the housing crisis. Do you reckon that stacks up?
Well, a relative of mine was a fly-in, fly-out miner in WA. Had been renting an apartment there for a couple of years, and was issued a notice to leave the apartment unless she would be prepared to pay 2.5 times the rent. And the reason was because the landlord was leasing the apartment to some scheme to do with housing immigrants. So, you know, there are issues there. And once again, you've got all these different...
And yet the Australian Council of Social Services, and I'm quoting here, and other groups called it nonsense to blame housing woes primarily on migrants, sorry?
Yeah, well, that's true. It's nonsense to blame it solely on that one thing. The fact is, the reason we have the issues with housing is because the way the government throws money around at at projects that don't matter. For example, the collection of machetes in Victoria. A Victorian MP put a video out the other day. She was standing, I think, near Cranbourne in front of a machete collection box, under a camera, under a spotlight, in front of a police station that had no machetes in it. It's never likely to get any. And she said that installation cost $350,000 for what effectively is, that's effectively a steel bin out the front of St Vinny's to collect clothes. $350,000? You could have built a house for somebody for that, Rob. This is...
I agree.
You know, it's madness.
Graeme, I'm on the record as being against the upcoming social media ban for under 16s. I find the take on the website interesting because it says, we oppose any attempt to silence free expression online. The proposed social media ban bill threatens open discussion and democratic accountability by giving authorities unprecedented power to restrict what we say, share, and organise around. Now, we know the government is expecting companies and tech companies to make sure their users are over 16. I still don't understand how this will work in practice, because they reckon we won't have to upload any documents as proof. Do you think that's believable?
Look, I don't think it's believable, Rob. And the truth is, when does freedom of speech apply? What age do you have to have freedom of speech?
Good point.
You know, and this whole thing is about bringing in another element of control. The reason these rallies are happening is because we are one of the most over-governed countries in the world. And we have got people interfering with absolutely every aspect of our life and existence. We're fed up with it. That's why I long for the good old days in Australia when you didn't need a permit to go for a walk in a national park. So we're in this situation because government keeps getting involved. Now, if the predation of underage minors on the internet is a grave concern, but we shouldn't be abrogating the responsibilities of the parents to make sure that their kids are safe as well. So what have we got to do? Because some parents can't be bothered, the whole country has to suffer a degradation to it. That's communism. It's just bizarre. And how are they going to enforce it? And what sort of issues are they going to have along the way? You know, what's somebody going to have to do? Is somebody going to be holding somebody else's face at a camera under duress? Look, there's 1,000 ways this could go wrong. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, we lost you for a quick moment there, Graeme, but we got the gist of what you were saying. One of the issues I think we have here is I've still got two more topics. We've been going for over 30 minutes now, almost 35 minutes in this interview, which has been fascinating. It's the longest interview we've ever done on McKnight Tonight. But I've got to ask, are there too many issues here? You know, when we think about the March for Australia, it was a simple message, anti-immigration and Australian pride. Are there too many messages here for people?
Well, if there are too many messages, Rob, it's because we've got way too many issues. So the fact is that if you went to the people in the rally on the 31st of August, which I thought was a fantastic turnout, regardless of the propaganda around it, the people were fed up. If you asked them all why they were there, they would. If you asked 300 people, you would have got 300 different reasons.
Yeah,
that's why we're in this state. That's why we're in this state that we are in this country. We've got to address the issues. And the only way to do that is to talk to the people. And they're just not interested in talking. They're not interested in talking, and they're not interested in listening to the people. And look, if you keep poking the bear, any government that fails to see the peril that this government is putting this country in by continuing to deny people a voice and deny people a right to share their concerns publicly and have those concerns being answered, that is a government that has lost its direction. It has no social situational awareness, and it has no context of what's possible if these things continue to go on. You don't need to be a rocket scientist. History is replete with examples of how this can go badly wrong. And these governments continue to divide and ignore.
I think it's a fair point. Do you think people will turn up? It's so close to the other march. Are you expecting a good turnout?
Look, I think people will turn up, even more so now that the bridge has been taken off, and it's in every other city around Australia. I think the momentum of the 31st of August has shown people. I'm being contacted by people in my family who would never contemplate going to rally, and they say, we've had enough. Now, a lot of people slept through COVID, and people that were rallying about COVID, those people were awake to those issues, which led them down other pathways. But a lot of people now are starting to wake up over digital ID. They're waking up over the possible disappearance of cash in this country and the central bank digital currency. All these things are going to wake up a new bunch of people. So any government that thinks that the crowds are only going to get smaller and the people are just going to drift away, they're deluding themselves.
Well, Graeme, you are also the co-host of Club Grubbery with former paramedic John Larter. And if people want to listen to that podcast, they just need to go to clubgrubbery.com.au. So there are more details. Grubbery. I knew I'd say it wrong. I knew it because I keep thinking Club Buggery.
Now that's how we named it, Club Grubbery, because people were saying Johnny Larter and I were the Roy and HG of the so-called freedom movement, whatever that is. I've got no idea what that is, but so when ScoMo, we called it Club ScoMo. When ScoMo lost the election, we thought, what are we going to call it? So we came up with Club Grubbery as opposed to Club Buggery, because we were talking about people we see as real grubs. So, but we've interviewed Tony Abbott and we've interviewed some of the finest minds around the world. We've got a wonderful audience, and we've got some credible interviews online for people to look at. I think we've done about 500 of them.
Geez, well worth a listen. And of course, the Australia Unites rallies are taking place this Saturday, the 13th of September, all around the nation. Graeme, thank you for joining us on McKnight Tonight. It has been fascinating. Thank you so much.
A real pleasure, Rob. God bless you. God bless Australia.
Wow. Lots of feedback coming up. And the one thing I will say for people that are new to the McKnight Tonight ecosystem, we all disagree with each other, but we do keep it civil here and we don't attack each other. And, we all have different ideas. And that's why I go live. That's why I bring out feedback, because I want to hear what you've got to say. Bring it on to me. Don't attack other people for their beliefs, because what I want from McKnight Tonight is a place where we can have these discussions. And I know there's a lot of people who watch this and disagree with me. And I actually love that. I love that we can have that disagreement and we can actually, I can say my piece, you can say your piece. And Graeme has actually invited me onto his Club grubbery podcast, so we'll be doing that very soon. All right, let's get to your feedback that's coming through to McKnight Tonight before we quickly wrap up this sucker. Private, I've never watched this channel before. This guy is good. Well, I can only assume you mean me, Private, so thank you very much. I appreciate it. It hasn't all been positive, but I'll take that one. We've got Gavin saying, damn Master Control, best ask for more time and throw a commercial break. Thank you, Gavin. Travis says, for first-time viewers, the show is produced by a total of 3 people, so these tech issues sometimes happen. It's part of the fun. That's very true. We try to make this look like a full broadcast television show. It's in my garage. My wife sits just over there. Amanda switching. Jasmine, my 18-year-old daughter, does the feedback. It's just the 3 of us, and you know what? Sometimes it goes wrong. Dylan says, Matthew with the gift memberships. Now, Dylan, you can say that, but you gave away a gift membership, and during that interview, Matthew Braun gave 5 memberships away. Thank you so much, guys, because it helps us keep doing this. We're trying to build this channel. We're relatively new. We're trying to build it. That's the kind of thing that helps us. And if you did like that interview with Graeme, make sure you subscribe. Trish says, Greg Hunt said that we were all taking part in the world's largest clinical trial ever on the Insider Show. Yeah, it certainly was a trial as we were all dealing with COVID live. Over the page we go. Beck says, I just think that the world has become so divided, like, why can't we all be nice to each other? We love a bit of niceness here on McKnight Tonight. We love a laugh. We love a bit of a disagreement, and we love to get into it, don't we, Beck? All right. Gareth says, Australia Unites is a tinfoil hat anti-vax rally. As someone who works in health, it's disappointing that Rob is platforming conspiracy theorists like Graeme Hood. This is RFK Jr. level insanity. Gareth, you know I always love your feedback, and even when you take me to task, but I don't understand why it's a bad thing to platform Graeme Hood. He's going to be leading a big rally, or we assume it's going to be a big rally, happening around the country, but he'll be leading the Sydney one. Don't we want to know what they're talking about, what they're standing up for? And to be honest, I didn't find Graeme extreme. There are things I agree with him on. There are things I don't. I enjoyed the conversation. When he made a point about the pro-Palestinian rally being able to go across the Harbour Bridge, I made the point that the police had said no to that, taken them to court, and they fought it. So, I just don't know what Graeme was saying that was so completely out of touch. He wasn't there saying COVID gives you rabies, you know, like, I don't know. Anyway, over the page we go. Lambo says, Woody isn't an extremist. He just learnt the truth about stuff, but you don't want to know. Interesting. Over the page we go. Michael says, what I think that is lacking in Australia now is having respectful discussions of very important issues like those being discussed with Rob and Graeme. We don't have to always agree to discuss issues. Couldn't agree more, Michael. I think that might be the comment of the day. Restoration Archive says, companies are still pushing the COVID vax. Go on to Seek and have a look. Yeah, and I think that's wrong. If that's happening, Restoration Archive, and I'll take you at face value on that. Jan says, what a great interview. That's all right, Amanda. You can interrupt my train of thought with that. If you want to put up if you want to put up a bit of social media saying what a great interview, I'll take it. And Restoration Archive says, wow, Rob's first 1 hour show. I know. And I'm bloody exhausted. I need a Tipsy Thursday drink now. If you have still made it, I'm wrapping up. But we are back tomorrow with the Media McKnight. That's the media version of McKnight Tonight, where I discuss the media and what's happening. Back with McKnight Tonight on Wednesday and Thursday at 9 p.m. And Thursday is our Tipsy Thursday, where we grab a wine usually, and we talk the hot topics of the day over a wine. So I hope you can join me. Hope you can take another look if you're a first-time visitor. To all the regulars, thank you as always. You know I love your work, and we will see you. Oh, we've got one more. There's one more piece of feedback I didn't get to. I've really loved listening to this interview. My first time listening. Really good, tough picks covered with hoodie. Thank you, Lambo. Appreciate it. All right, that will wrap us up. We've crossed the threshold of over an hour. We will be back tomorrow at 9 p.m. This is McKnight Tonight, and it's good night from McKnight. Cheerio. Cheerio?
It's good.